Welcome back to the Figuring It Out podcast. In this episode, I want to talk about one part of traveling that can make your experiences much more affordable and much more sociable, and that would be staying in hostels, which can sound like a scary word to some people. I know when I was younger, the thought of staying in a hostel didn't sound like something very appealing. All I thought about was the 2005 Hostel film, which was a horror. And watching that, or even just hearing about that, is enough to put anyone off staying in a hostel. However, as I've gotten older and as I've stayed in many hostels, I think at least 20 now, I can definitely say that that is not the case. Hostels are actually a great way to meet a lot of people, to stay somewhere central, to stay somewhere social, and to save a lot of money while you're at it. And touching on the first episode of my podcast, where I gave a lot of tips about travel, I wanted to focus this episode on hostels themselves. This is my own experience in hostels, how to book hostels, what to look for, what to bring with you, what to expect when you come to a hostel, how to get the best out of staying in a hostel, and essentially how to break through that kind of fear of hostels or that kind of negativity towards them. Because, yeah, there can be bad experiences, but, you can get those in hotels too. So I'd like to just talk about, first of all, my experience of hostels. I first stayed in a hostel at 21. That was my experience in Prague, which, while the experience itself wasn't great, the hostel itself was absolutely up to my standards. It had a bar in the underground. Never knew hostels could have bars, and I thought that was really cool that there was an actual bar in the hostel, and everyone was really friendly too. And although I didn't have a great experience in other parts of that trip, the hostel itself was really nice, and it made me realize that in the future when I do travel, I'm not scared to stay in hostels anymore. In fact, given my experience on that trip, I found hostels were quite nice in the fact that I had people to come back to talk about my experience and to kind of pull me away from that bad experience that I had. Just by being around people, it made me feel safer, which might sound quite strange because the idea of sharing a room with strangers you don't know actually sounds quite scary. It doesn't sound like something that would be safe. But in fact, I've found hostels are a very safe place to be. They have receptionists 24 hours, they have people around at all times. And yeah, I often find when you travel solo, actually staying in a hostel can really make you feel more at home or more kind of in a family environment. So I'm going to start by talking about how to book a hostel. For most of the hostels I stay in, I use Hostel World. Now, the reason for this is it's just one platform. It has hostels from all over the world on it. It's laid out very simple. There's an app as well. It also has a chat function, and that's another way to meet people. So what I always do is when I've booked my trip, found my cheap flights, I go onto Hostel World, I type in the city that I'm staying in, and one of the main things I look for is location. I want to make sure that the hostel I'm staying in is in a good location, so I'm not having to get lots of transport, figure out how to get into the city. And I would say most hostels in big cities and capital cities do have a lot of hostels in the main area, so you should be quite spoilt for choice, really. And then once you've done that, just look at the prices, but also look at reviews as well. Now, reviews, it's not essential that the hostel has a 10-star review. It's marked out of 10. But I would say if you start seeing 3 or 4 stars or sort of anything below 6, really, be mindful, because if a lot of people have taken the time to write those reviews, it may not be the right place for you, especially if it looks sort of suspiciously cheap. You'll get a good idea about how much a hostel is depending on the city, the country, and wherever you are, because it can really vary, especially in Europe. For example, a lot of places in sort of Eastern Europe, you can get rooms for £10, which include breakfast and are very nice. But then if you go to other places like sort of Nordic countries, they can cost a lot more. They can be triple, 4 times as much. So you'll get an idea when you look just at the kind of prices it might be to stay in that particular place. And once you do that, it will give you a good idea of what kind of hostel you want to stay in. There's different types of hostels. There are party hostels, but I will warn you, with party hostels, you kind of have to expect not to sleep much. Now, I'm not a massive fan of party hostels, purely for the fact that I know I can be sociable without staying in a party hostel. And I do still appreciate, a good 7-8 hours sleep. So if you are quite young and looking for something where you do just want to be out all the time and just have somewhere to lay your head, then sure, try out a party hostel. But just because you don't stay in a party hostel doesn't mean it won't be sociable. So other hostels that can be really sociable, things to look for are, some of them have activities. It will mention on the page on Hostel World the activities that they have. They might have like daily activities, quizzes, bar crawls, something for everyone really. And also, when it comes to how many you want to stay in a dorm with, just be mindful that sometimes a price might be very low, but it might be because there's 20 beds in a dorm. And personally, I think I like to stick to maybe eight or under. I think that's quite a good number. It means that things don't get too crowded. You do have a bit of your own space, and it doesn't kind of feel like you're walking over everyone's shoes and towels and everything on the floor. So ideally, I would say to look for eight or less. It's great when you can find hostels that have curtains on the beds or even like little pods, which is something a lot of hostels are getting now, but you won't find that everywhere. Some countries just don't seem to have that. A lot of them are sort of classic bunk beds. You know what? Even with classic bunk beds, there's ways you can have your privacy. I find that, using a towel sometimes to put over the edge of the bed, say if you're on the bottom bunk, you can hang the towel off where you sleep. It just gives you that extra bit of privacy. And one thing I sometimes do as well, as I say sometimes, I always do this, I bring an eye mask and I wear that while I sleep. That just gives me that extra bit of privacy and comfort. Particularly when you are looking to book a hostel, it does sometimes come price versus comfort. Sometimes it's better just to pay that extra couple of pounds and get somewhere that just looks a little bit more comfortable, maybe has slightly better reviews. But at the end of the day, that's down to you and whatever you think looks like it will fit your needs. But I would say be open-minded, and there will be a lot of options, especially in sort of bigger cities. And I've mentioned Hostel World, and one of the reasons is as I say, it's very well laid out. There's an app. It also has the social side, but also you could use Booking.com or another one, and sometimes it can be cheaper. It could even be cheaper to book direct. Now that's entirely up to you. But for me, if it only comes down to a pound or two again, I would rather use Hostel World, just because it's very simply laid out. They have often very good cancellation policies. And if you are thinking, maybe you can't go, it's good to get a room that you can cancel, because that often does happen. You can book rooms that have free cancellations up until a day or two before. So I'll leave that up to you. But what I would say is, if it's not a lot of difference in price, Hostel World is definitely the way to go. Next, I want to talk about things that you should bring with you to a hostel, because it is quite different from a hotel. A lot of hostels won't just have a towel on the bed. Some will, but not all. Some of them you'll have to actually pay. It could be €5 or more just to borrow a towel. And we're trying to save money here. So the best thing really you can do is bring a towel with you. If you want to save space, a microfiber towel can work well. Even though they're not obviously the most comfy towels, you can get quite big ones which wrap up into a really small kind of cube from Decathlon or somewhere like that. So I'd recommend to bring a towel. I would also recommend to bring a padlock, because a lot of hostels come with lockers which you padlock yourself. And if you don't have a padlock, again, that's something else you have to pay for. And that's a good way to keep your stuff safe, because one concern for a lot of people with staying in hostels might be the safety aspect of it. And yeah, to that I sort of say most of them will have places you can lock your stuff up. If they don't, you can always lock your bag up, or you can take things with you when you go out, or you can just speak to reception and see if they have anything. And generally they will have a way that you can keep your stuff safe and not have to worry about it while you're out. I'd also suggest bringing quite a long power cable. Now, often in hostels, you will have a power socket next to your bed, but sometimes you won't. Sometimes it will be quite far away. So if you can bring a long 3 meter cable, then you'll be able to charge your device in your hostel bed from a little further away, and you won't feel like you need to leave your phone unattended or it might die. And another thing is a power bank, which I think goes without saying. Bring a power bank just to make sure you give your phone and devices that extra bit of charge. I'd also say, staying in a hostel, it's good to be organised. And this is because you are sometimes dealing with smaller spaces. There are a lot of people around, and you don't want to be that person that's using up all the space, putting everything on the floor and just taking up a lot of space. So being organised, and the way you can do that is to bring a toiletry bag. There are some great ones you can get that kind of fold out and have different sections for different bits of toiletries. If you use that, you can then take it to the bathroom, use it for how you need, and then bring it back again. And also, I like to find when I pack, I also have kind of a bag for my dirty clothes and also a bag for my clean clothes. And then as soon as I've used a clean bit of clothing, I put it in the bag for the dirty clothes. And organization like that in hostels, I think, comes in really handy. And if you follow all of those instructions, then I think you will go a long way in a hostel. Now I'll talk about arriving at the hostel. This can be the daunting part, especially if you've never stayed at a hostel before. You just don't really know what to expect. I remember a couple of nights before one of my first hostel stays, I kind of had a dream about staying in a hostel, and it was a strange dream because I didn't really know what to expect. And I remember being in this room with loads of people, and it was just a weird atmosphere, and I just I felt daunting. I felt very nervous. But one thing I will say when you do arrive is be friendly with your receptionist, because most receptionists at hostels are actually volunteers. And the reason they're receptionists is just to either earn a bit of money or get free keep while they stay there. So a lot of them will know the area, a lot of them will be quite young and be quite experienced with going out and everything that the city has to offer for a young person. So I would say when you check in, just have a chat with them. Ask them, first of all, are there any events at the hostel? And if not, are there any other events around the city? Now, some receptions will try and sell you a bar crawl, which, to be honest, are great ways to make friends. But I'll admit, if you are on a budget, a bar crawl can sometimes cost you two or three times what you're paying to stay at that hostel. For example, a €10 hostel, a bar crawl can be 20, €30. And they say it includes all these different things. I mean, you get a shot at each bar generally, but I would say it's not essential. It's not the only thing that will help you make friends, but also it doesn't hurt to do it because it can be quite fun and it can be a good way to meet people. But don't let that be the only activity you do, because next I'm going to go on to obviously using the app Hostel World to meet up with people. Now, you might find when you've booked a hostel, you'll look on the app and there will be a section for the hostel itself, but also a section for the city you're staying in. Now, I generally find the section for the hostel will just have questions about the hostel. Do I need to bring this? Do I need to do that? I'll be honest, if you have questions about the hostel, reach out to the hostel directly, because this chat is just full of people who stay there and often you won't get a reply. But another section, which is with the city itself, will often arrange meetups. So anyone staying in that city, regardless of the hostel, they can all work together to arrange meetups. Sometimes people will make group chats on Instagram. Sometimes people will say, we're going to meet at a bar at this time. Sometimes they may even say they're meeting at your hostel. So use the app and that will help you to meet people. But also, when you get into your dorm, you're going to have dorm mates, especially if you're in a sort of 4, 6, 8 bed dorm. There's generally going to be people there when you get in. Also friendly to them. Now, I'm not saying they're going to become your best friend, but just saying hello, just maybe asking where they're from, what they've been up to. It's a really good way to just initiate conversation. And sometimes you'll have an instant spark. When I first went to Spain, I stayed in Madrid. I met this Australian guy. We got chatting. We ended up going for dinner that night. It was lovely. It was great. But I also remember staying in other hostels where I've gotten chatting to someone, or maybe a couple of friends or someone, and they've been a little bit reserved or said, oh, okay, we have to go now, or we're doing this, or maybe haven't even talked as much. But don't be too disheartened by that, because people stay in hostels for different reasons. Some people will stay at a hostel because it's just cheaper for them than staying in a hotel, but they might be there for work, so they might need an early night. Some people might be there with a friend to go to a concert and they don't really have time to socialize with other people. So that's not your only option to meet people. Now, if you walk in and you meet someone straight away, amazing, great. But if you don't, that's fine. There are other ways to meet people. As I said, there's the Hostel World app. There's also the common area in the hostel. A lot of hostels have common areas, pool tables, things like that, and also activities. So there are going to be tons of ways you can meet people when you stay at hostels. But also, if you are in a hostel and you do just want that peace and quiet and to just chill out for a little while, you can do that too. Like I say, bring an eye mask. Also bring earplugs, because when you sleep, sometimes it does help to block out a bit of the noise, because it can be a little noisy in hostels at times, even if it's not a party hostel. And headphones too can be great, because sometimes you spend the day exploring the city, you go for lunch, you do nice things. An afternoon nap or just an afternoon listen to a bit of music in your hostel bed can really help you kind of feel a bit better and a bit ready for the rest of the day, especially, for example, if you have dinner plans or you might be meeting people from the hostel later. So I just want to make that clear that when you do stay in a hostel, you can come back at any time in the day. You can relax, you can chill out in there. It's not just a bed for the night. You can also use it as a place to relax and a common area as well. That can be great for chilling out, reading, meeting people, having a coffee. So yeah, I'm hoping that I've kind of sold someone the idea of hostels, someone who maybe hasn't stayed in them before. And I will also add, if you do stay there, and for example, one night and you find that there's a lot of disruption, a lot of noise, or just something doesn't sit right with you or something doesn't feel right, you can speak to the receptionist. You can say, I'm not feeling comfortable in this room. There might be a reason for that. It might just be that you're not feeling comfortable in yourself. And if you do decide, this isn't for me, I need to leave, then that's okay too. I mean, especially if you book with the cancellation policies, you may only have to pay for one night and then you can go, you can find somewhere that's more suited to you, whether that be a private room in a hostel, a hotel, or anything that you like. That's okay because every hostel's different and your experience might not be the same as someone else's experience, and especially if you don't quite feel safe. So go in it with expectations of having a great time, meeting people, and I think 9 times out of 10 that will happen. So I do want to say, hostels are great. They are affordable, they're sociable. The amount of hostels I've stayed in, if you compared that to what I would have paid for hotels, we would be talking thousands and thousands of pounds more. So generally, I probably wouldn't have been to half the countries that I have. So staying in hostels has allowed me to stay in loads. It's allowed me to meet people from all over the world. And that's been a great experience because it's also led to other experiences in other countries and occasionally getting accommodation in other countries. For example, you meet someone that is living in another country and they invite you to stay with them. And then you've just unlocked this new free accommodation just from staying in a hostel. And staying in hotels can be great. You can get that freedom. And if you have stayed in a hostel for a few nights and you need that break, then by all means, stay in a hotel, give yourself that rest, give yourself that rejuvenation. But it's great to stay in a hostel. It's great to meet people and then have other opportunities that come from that. So yeah, as you can tell, I definitely vouch for staying in hostels, and I haven't always been that way. And I hope that other people listen to this. Maybe you've stayed in them a few times, maybe you've never stayed in them, but I hope this kind of gives you a good idea as to what it is like to stay at a hostel, and maybe it sort of opened your eyes to staying in one in the future. So that's the end of this episode. I hope you've enjoyed it, and I'll be back soon for another one.